Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Roundup, everyone. This is a Friday edition of the video series, which means that I'll be looking at any campaigns that launched on Wednesday or Thursday, and then looking ahead to some hand-picked campaigns that are completing their funding next week. Now, I've had a busy weekend and a busy end of week, so instead of coming out on a Friday, this video is actually getting filmed and will post probably Sunday night. So there's that. And there's only one notable campaign that debuted on Wednesday and Thursday. So this will be a very short video. Looking ahead, though, to the campaign's funding next week, there are 4 different campaigns, so I will quickly talk about each of those in the back half of the video. As always, my videos are timestamped and bookmarked, so you can always scroll over the play bar to see the content that you're specifically interested in and just go to that content. And also, everything is linked in the description of the video. So if you are particularly interested in the one campaign that debuted this week, or any of the 4 campaigns that are ending next week, you can go down into the description section, click on the link, and it will take you right to those campaigns. Without any further ado, let's get started. So the single campaign that came out during this period is on Gamefound. It's called Caged In MMA Card Combat, and this is from Foam Hammer Games. Now, if we want to quickly take a look at them on Board Game Geek, all right, so here's the game. It's from Foam Hammer Games. And as we can see, they've really only done one other notable game, which is this Book It, the Pro Wrestling Promoter card game. So they've really had one successful game published in the past. Now we'll take a quick look at this. However, as you can see, they have a funding goal of $15,000. They're currently at $4,400. And remember, I'm shooting this much later than normal. So this campaign has already been running for several days, and they are far under that 2/3 goal that they need to hit of their funding goal in order to fund, generally, which means that this game is likely not going to fund. I mean, very likely not going to fund. But the campaign will end on April the 29th, and if it were to fund, then the game would be delivered in October of 2023. Now we can see that there are a few different pledge levels here. There's Preliminary Fighter, which is an early bird special. That's still going, even as of late on Sunday. And that would be a $35 pledge. Once this is gone, and I'm not sure when it is, if it's still going now. Let's see, for the first backers. So there's some number here that they have that this is limited to that they have not hit yet. See, there's 22 left. Okay. So when those are all gone, then you'll only be able to pledge at this higher level for $40. But both of these are the full game, essentially. Then they have this champion level, which includes, you can see here, Caged In, and their previous game, Book It, the Pro Wrestling Promoter card game, along with these 2 expansions for this game and some exclusive cards. Finally, there's a promoter level here. This is just for multiple copies. It's kind of a retailer pledge. And then they have this Greatest of All Time, which will just give you all of their games in the future. So if you were to pledge this for $500, then you would automatically get any games they crowdfund in the future, assuming there are any more. Okay, and then there's things like the game Book It, different things that you can get as add-ons. Now, shipping here is going to be, for the continental US, $10 for their preliminary or contender model, which means you're looking at a total of $45, or once this gets sold out, $50 for just the base game. Now, here's a quick look at this game. You can see it is an MMA fighting game. And the thing that makes this kind of unique, I guess, is that players are going to be drawing from a central deck. And so they'll essentially be sharing that central deck. You know, there are a lot of fighting games where each side has their own deck and they're pulling from that deck in kind of a deck building mechanism or deck construction mechanism. But in this case, both players are going to be pulling from the same central deck of cards. And this is just, as we can see here, this is just a 2-player game. So it's a one-on-one fighting game with an MMA theme. It's a hand management card game, and in the description, it's described as a fast-paced 2-player fighting game that has players squaring off in MMA combat. Fighters will choose from 4 unique styles and try to knock each other out, submit each other, or impress the judges for a decision. So that's really the game in a nutshell. There's not too much more to see here. There's these, 4 fighting styles: judo fighter, pure striker, submission fighter, and wrestler. There's the card deck, and then players are going to have these sort of player mats that they're going to be checking off things as they take out parts of the other player's body. So they kind of whittle them down by part. And there's a few videos here if you want to take a closer look at some of the gameplay. And that's it. But like I said, it's not going to fund. It's really, I don't see a way that this is going to fund if they've only done, less than a third of their funding in the first 4 or 5 days at this point. But that is the one campaign that was really notable that came out on Wednesday or Thursday. So let's jump ahead and let's look at the games of note that will be finishing their campaigns next week. The first of these is Marrakesh Essential Edition, and this is part of the Steffenfeld City Collection. They've been running these campaigns for a year or two. They did them in pairs. So the first campaign featured Hamburg and Amsterdam. The second campaign featured Marrakesh and New York City. But Marrakesh was a bigger game. It had a box that was, longer than the others. You'll see in a minute when I scroll down to it. And I did talk about this game in a previous video when it launched, and it wasn't that long ago. This has been a short campaign. So you can go back a few videos and see more information on this. But this is what the box looked like originally. And so what they've done in this version is they've made an essential version in a smaller box, which means they've had to shrink down the board so that it can fit in a more standard sized box. So the Essential Edition isn't better than the Deluxe Edition if you have that already. In fact, I would say it's not as good, right? Because it's shrunk down. It's going to have a smaller main board, and a lot of the additional components are shrunk as well so that everything can fit in the smaller sized box. Now, through this campaign, you'll be able to pledge for this Essential Edition, and it's about half the price of the Deluxe Edition. So if you're looking for a cheaper version of Marrakesh or simply a version that will take up less space, this is the right campaign for you. But as we scroll down here, you can see you can also get this in a bundle with Kokopelli, which is another Steffenfeld game that was kickstarted a few years ago. That was not part of the Steffenfeld City Collection, so that's just being tied here as its kind of own bundle. But if we keep going down here, you can get the Deluxe Edition through this campaign. So this is the classic edition of that Deluxe Edition, meaning it doesn't have the deluxe components, but it does have all of the larger board sizes and tiles and things, and it is in this larger size box. Now, if we scroll down even further, this is the actual Deluxe Edition, and right now there are 10 of these left. And this is, again, the bigger size box, but this has all of the deluxe components. As you can see, this is a more expensive pledge. So this one's $170. If you wanted this classic version that still has, like, you know, the big board and the big tiles and things like that, but not all of the deluxe components, that's $115. And then if you want the Essential Edition, which has everything shrunk down, that's just $70. Now, if we look down here in shipping, you can see the shipping for the Essential Edition is $22, which is going to bring this up to a $91 pledge in the continental US. And if you're going for either the Classic or the Deluxe, it's a $29 shipping cost, which means the Classic is going to run you $144, and the deluxe version is going to run you $199, and those prices again are in the continental US. Now this campaign is going to end on Tuesday, April 4th. So if you're seeing this on a Sunday night or on a Monday, there's not too much time left on this. But as you can see, they are well over their funding goals, so this is going to fund. So that is the first of 4 campaigns that we're looking at that are completing funding this week. And these games are all sort of my picks of everything that's out there that's ending this week. These are the 4 things that I think are the best games out there, the best campaigns out there that you might want to be aware of, and take a, just kind of take a last look at it to see if these are something that you want. Okay, next on the list is Sentinels of the Multiverse Disparation expansion, and this one is on Backerkit. And this is being put out by Greater Than Games. As you can see, they've run a pretty healthy campaign. They had a funding goal originally of $40,000. They're at $384,000. This is a superhero deck construction game. It's not directly tied to Marvel or DC, so it's kind of its own thing, but it takes place in an era of superheroes that's very much kind of like the Silver Age in terms of comics. And, it's probably something you could put on a level with like Marvel Champions, the card game. However, it's a little easier to get to the table versus Marvel Champions, the card game, because all of the decks are pre-formed. There's not much that you're going to be doing in terms of changing those decks around. You're just going to reach for the deck for that character, and then you're off and you're ready to go. And all of the characters, all the stuff that's available in this set, in this game, is either in this reprinting of the base game that's available through this campaign, or in this new expansion. So again, unlike Marvel Champions, the card game, there are not a million extra packs that you have to go and hunt down and find. Everything is available through this campaign, and it just comes through the base game or the expansion. So because it's easier, to kind of have everything, and you don't have to go hunting down packs. There aren't packs coming out every month or two like with Marvel Champions. And also because all of the card decks for each hero is pre-assembled, it's just much easier to get it to the table, and then when you're done, kind of put it away. It's just an easier experience altogether. It's a little bit easier to teach as well. Now, if this is something you're interested in, this campaign, as well as the next one, are going to be funding on April 6th, which is Thursday of this week. And you can see here the pledge levels. For $50, you can get this new expansion, Disparation, and this is probably the pledge level you'd want if you already have the base game, if you've pledged before. If you want to get everything with this pledge, if you don't have any Sentinels stuff, then you probably want this $150 pledge, the Everything Definitive Edition. And shipping down here shows us that in the US, the pledges are about $10 to $16 for the shipping, which means that this pledge is probably going to come to about $60 in the continental US, and this one will probably come to about $166. So I played this. This is a good deck construction superhero game. And again, if you're looking for something like Marvel Champions, the card game, that's a little more kind of self-contained and easier to get to the table, this is a good alternative to that. And it's being put out by Greater Than Games. They're probably best known for doing Spirit Island. Okay. Also on Thursday, April 6th, is the new expansions for Townsfolk Tussle. Now, this is a boss battler. It's got this kind of vintage animation style, from like the 20s or 30s, but it's a little gone wrong. There's kind of a horror element to it. There are things like dismemberments, chopped limbs, things like that. Now, I actually played this game this weekend, and I am planning on talking about this in my video that I publish on Tuesday, because the Tuesday videos always have a back half where I talk about all the games that I've played in the last week. So I will go into more detail in this in the Tuesday video, It will be published on Tuesday. It won't be late like this one was. So there will be an opportunity for you to watch that video and hear what I have to say about this before the campaign ends if you're trying to decide whether or not to pledge this. I will say quickly, though, I had heard from some friends of mine that they didn't love this game. They didn't like the gameplay for it. A lot of what people seem to like is the art and the theme. And I will say, having played it myself, you are sort of at the mercy of the dice rolls in this game. There are some things that you can do with buying gear that mitigates the dice rolls somewhat, and there are things that you can do around the board interacting with terrain on the board that can help you to some degree. However, at its core, this is still a game that relies heavily on dice rolls, so things can be very swingy, and they can end up working out, your way just based on a dice roll, or very much not. So that's something to be aware of before you go deep into this, because the pledge levels for this are rather expensive. As you can see, they did fund. They have a $100,000 funding goal. They're at $850,000, so they funded quite handily. And this is 2 different expansions that are new, as well as a second edition, a reprint. So let's just take a look at these pledges. They're like I said, they're not cheap. So if you want to get the second edition here, it's $105. If you want to get just the 2 new expansions, it's $115. And if you want to get everything, you're looking at $210. Now, the shipping, though, is also nothing to sneeze at. So the shipping here for the base game is $30, which means in the continental US, for this you'd be looking at $135. And for the new stuff, you'd be looking at $148. And then if you're getting everything, you're looking at $261. So it's not a cheap game. It's not a cheap pledge, and it is pretty swingy in terms of the gameplay. But I still really enjoyed it, and I felt like for the theme and what the game is about, I didn't mind it so much that a lot of it, relied on dice rolls that could just go any which way. Another thing I think that is a positive to this game is that it's very easy to teach people. So you can play it with non-gamers, and it's very easy to get to the table. It's very easy to play. It's not something that you're going to get hung up on. When you sit down and play it, you're going to fight 4 bosses in a row. Some people have had a problem with that, thinking the game goes too long with 4 bosses. And I will say, because of the kind of simplistic nature of the gameplay, the dice rolling, and the repetitiveness, I can understand why some people wouldn't want to play 4 bosses. So one of the things with these 2 new expansions is that they've come up with a new mode where you only fight 3 bosses. But either way, you're sitting down and you're fighting 3 or 4 bosses in a sitting, and then you're done. There isn't a long campaign for this. So it's everything you do in kind of one session, which again makes it more approachable than something like Kingdom Death Monster, a boss battler with huge campaigns where you're going to be upgrading equipment over a long period and kind of going through this long kind of series of interconnected scenarios and adventures. This is something where you just sit down, you fight 3 bosses, and you're done. So it's easier to get to the table in that sense, and because you're not dealing with all of these other elements, it makes it easy to play, in addition to it being easy to teach. So I do think that this is a fun game, and I enjoyed it a lot, and the theme makes it really unique and engaging as far as I'm concerned. And so it didn't bother me that there is that swingy nature to the gameplay, but it is there. And again, I'll talk about this a little bit more in the Tuesday video. But if you're thinking about this one, just know that it does fund on Thursday of this week. Okay, the final campaign that's funding this week is going to fund on Friday, on April 7th, and that's for D.E.I. Divide et Impera, and this is another expansion and a reprint. So there is some new playable factions. Those are the expansions. It's Faith and Anarchy. There's 2 new factions that you can play, and then they've gone and they've reprinted the whole game. Now, this is a worker placement game, and there's some area control. Basically, you live in this post-apocalyptic frozen tundra of a world. The big tiles in this modular board each contain 3 levels of tiles within it. And putting this together was actually pretty fun. There are these little kind of gummy circles that you peel, unpeeled, and then you stack these tiles on top of each other and glued them together, and the production value of it was very impressive. But as you're playing this game, you're going to be going into these frozen buildings and trying to get resources, and whether you can pull that off or not is going to involve sort of an area control mechanic on the tile. But it's a worker placement game at heart, and there's some resource management, and it is a competitive Euro. Now, I just say that to distinguish it from something like Frostpunk, the board game, which is a similar theme, but that is a solo or a cooperative game. So this one is a competitive Euro. Players are going to be playing against each other, and it's designed by Tommaso Battista, who is the co-designer of Barrage. That was his first design. He co-designed that. This is a solo design of his. And I want to be able to tell you my recommendation on this before it funds. So I'm planning on playing this one solo tomorrow. And then when I publish my video on Tuesday talking about the games that I played, I'll be able to talk about this in more detail along with Townsfolk Tussle and give you my take on this and whether this is something that's worth backing. I'm very excited for the game. I think it looks great, but I haven't played it yet, so I can't really state an opinion. I can just say it looks good. But I'll have more information based on my gameplay in the next video that publishes on Tuesday. So that is really it for this video. I think we're done already. But I would like to say that in the Tuesday video, I'll be looking at any games that launched over the weekend. So that's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday launch. And then I'll be talking about the games that I played. And I can tell you now what those games will be. It'll be Townsfolk Tussle and D.E.I. Divided Impera. I'll also be talking about Astro Knights, Stardew Valley the board game, and Baron Park, because I played that for the first time over the weekend. And there's a very slight chance there might be one more game in there, maybe something like Valeria Card Kingdoms. But the 2 games that it was important to me that I was able to talk to you about on Tuesday are Townsfolk Tussle and D.E.I., just because I want to be able to tell you something substantive before those campaigns end, so that you'll have a little more information if you are right now on the fence about whether or not to back either of those 2 games. So I'll be back with another video in 2 days' time. I'll see you then. Until then, have a great week, take care, and play lots of great games.